Hi, I'm Dr. Donald DeFabio, and welcome to the Mayor's Roundtable. Intelligent conversation, a semi-round table, bringing information to you, the citizens of Berkeley Heights, from your mayor, Robert Woodruff. Mayor.
Doc, how are you?
I'm doing great, but first, we want to wish you a happy birthday, my friend. A round of applause for the mayor, please.
Thank you. Big crowd.
Big crowd. Well, it's your birthday, so happy birthday. Here it's your 39th, so enjoy it, okay?
Long 39.
That's it. You get to be my age, you stop counting, so enjoy them while you can. You know, things are moving fast. We got a lot of information. We're going to need to recap a little bit about the meetings that have been happening with the Township Committee and the Planning Board about the redevelopment. So that's really what we're going to be talking about. And also some new stuff has been happening with the affordable care housing with the redevelopment as well. Is that correct?
That's correct, Doc. And along those lines, we have Councilman Mark Fasher tonight with us. He'll be joining us in the second segment. The thing about affordable housing, if you stay around long enough, it'll change.
It sounds like the weather in New Jersey.
It does, and that's what's going on, unfortunately, with respect to affordable housing. But Mark will address that in detail, and we're looking forward to that. But in the meantime, some things have occurred. The Township Committee 2 nights ago passed a resolution adopting the redevelopment plan for this property, meaning that the footprint, the footprint has been accepted, and that is the redevelopment will proceed here. It'll be located out behind the current building. We have not specifically completed all of the rooms where they'll be, so on and so forth. We're still sharpening the pencil there, and our architects have listened to some of the concerns of people within the last week or so, and perhaps we can address, meet as many needs as we can meet. So
essentially the footprint, where the building's going to be, the square footage, all that's been dialed in, and what's going to be over there, correct? Or not
No, that's correct.
Okay.
We've known all along that we were going to have our administration there, that we were going to have our DPW will be in the same area, moved around, maybe some enhancement of the building. Our police department, our library. Okay, so basically all our needs, our building, engineering, all our needs will be contained in the one building, and we've been seeking, that's where we are. So we're in pretty good shape there. The next step there is to get out and bond this, all right, and then hopefully followed shortly thereafter with a request for qualifications, request for proposals, and then we really get into it, all right, and then we. Now, naturally, there's some other things involved in the whole redevelopment plan in town, but I think the best thing to do is address that the next meeting we talked about, because we've got, we got some things here at affordable housing. But also on Tuesday night, the council voted to amend what was heretofore Article 19.1, our design standards. What that has done, hopefully, is give our zoning board and our planning board a little more structure, a little more definition as to what we want the downtown to look like from a color standpoint, from a character. Okay?
So this is going to apply to the whole downtown area, not just to the municipal redevelopment building.
Right, and absolutely. So that was passed, and I want to thank all the individuals, both in the beautification committee and other areas in town that contributed to that. So. Like I said, we didn't redo the entire article, but we looked at various portions of it that needed to be tightened up, and we hope we've done that.
Salient features, salient points, highlights, what do we need to know
about
that?
You've got things like the characters of the buildings, in other words, the frontage, the signs, where signs go, the nature of the signs, whether you can backlight, can't backlight, and so on and so forth, the colors that we'd like to see people use. We give them options, but we want to keep it consistent. The front building, the facades, all right, the paving and so on and so forth, to give us a look, the use of consistency with respect to the lamps, the lighting in town, and so on.
So when it comes to Berkeley Heights, it's Berkeley Heights just by the look.
You just want to see a consistency, and we're getting there. And I think if people look around downtown and drive up and down Springfield, they're seeing that, okay? And we're getting the cooperation of the businesses in town, because we went to them and said, what do they like? So we're trying to get everybody's thoughts on this. So that's going well.
Now, this is just one property. We still have to do this same process with the plan, going to the planning board for the other properties involved with the redevelopment, correct?
That's correct, Doc. It has to be done with the library, okay, which this town still owns, obviously, and would be part of any agreement, which we are very, very close to entering with Little Flower. So there has to be a redevelopment plan for that locale. And then obviously the end product which is up at the current school, Little Flower School, that has to be addressed the same way. So, but this is what had to be done first, and we're there, and we're very excited, and we're moving forward.
And there'll be bonds on each one of these places as they go. They're all kind of same but individual?
Well, there'll just be a bond, okay, and that is for the fact that we are building here, okay? That bond will be for X amount of dollars, and then hopefully, and I don't see any reason not to think this is going to occur, is that when we look to sell the property we acquire in the agreement with Little Flower, we hope to develop that, and from that generate additional funds to pay down the bond.
Oh, nice.
Okay, and then work off obviously a reduced bond as we proceed forward.
So do we have an idea how much the bond will be, or is that kind of when we get bids back, do we really dial that
Well,
in?
right now we've told the public, and I think it's a fair figure, somewhere between 26 to 27 million is the figure. So that's kind of where we are there.
At least we have a ballpark figure of what we're looking
Yeah,
at.
yeah. And other than that, as you know, Doc, the Veterans Memorial was dedicated last week, and we've had nothing but tremendous comments from all of our citizenry. And again, thank you to Ted Romanko and Gay Hollowell and so many other people that were involved in that.
New Memorial Park, very nice, very nice. And I think there's in the new park across the street. Do we want to talk about that?
Yeah.
Yet, or?
No, I think we can at least talk about what is intended there. Okay. Vito Mondelli, the late Vito Mondelli, was kind enough to leave that property to the town, subject to the town taking it, and we determined we would do that subject to not having to spend any money, all right, to deal with the property. And the executor of that property is looking to perhaps sell off a portion of it to fund then turning the rest of it into a park.
Oh, nice.
So it'll be nice. It'll be nice because
Very fitting.
it'll kind of run from Peppertown Park on the other side of the track. So we'll have that, and we'll have the obviously the Memorial Field and the Veterans Monument. So the whole area looks, I think, will really look nice.
Nice. We're doing a nice progression in
Yep.
in the whole redevelopment theme. A little bit of park space, a little bit of memorial space, new space for the municipal offices, and then we're going to have plenty of parking for our commuters. So I think it'll be nice.
Correct.
I'm excited.
Well, I think we all are, Doc. And next Sunday, obviously, is Street Fair.
Nice.
Okay, and encouraging everybody to come out to that. We've had two or three or four of them. I can't keep track of them, but they've been tremendous. And so we're looking forward to that next Sunday. And
Perfect. So I think that's a lot of good information, good updates. Make sure everybody comes to the street fair. We're going to really get into the affordable care on the housing.
Affordable
on the
housing,
Second, on the second act of the show here, shall we
right.
say.
We'll bring
So,
Mark up and we'll get going.
We'll get started. Sounds
Okay.
like a plan. I'm Dr. Donald DeFabio for the Mayor's Roundtable and the birthday boy, Mayor Woodruff. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Mayor's Roundtable. I'm Dr. Donald DeFabio. Once again, I want to thank our live audience for coming out. Please give yourselves a hand. Remember that the Mayor's Roundtable is filmed at 6:45, 7 o'clock technically. Crew calls at 6:45, the third Thursday of every month right here in City Hall, so we welcome your participation. Mayor, you already told us who our next guest is, Councilman Fasher. Thank you very much for coming out again, a repeat guest. We appreciate that.
Thank
But
you
you're
for
not-
having me.
All right, you're not just a pretty face, though. Mayor, he's got some interesting information for us. Why Councilman Fasher tonight?
Well, the affordable housing issue has been front and center with us for about the last year or so as a result of some court decisions, and Mark's going to get into a little bit of history of this.
Okay.
And it's extremely important for this town because it has ramifications not only from a fiscal standpoint currently in dealing with the litigation, but then dealing down the road with how we eventually bring this to some form of a conclusion. So
Which is our ultimate goal.
that's
Get
our
this
ultimate
thing
goal,
closed.
and Mark has been our point person on this. He's doing a heck of a job, and So I thought it was appropriate that he come and speak directly as to where we're at and hopefully where we're going.
All right, well, Councilman, let's start with a little history. Why don't you give us a little background of where we've been, because this has been bounced around now for a little while, and then I guess we'll take it from there.
Sure. I'm going to go through about 40 years of history in about 3 minutes, so it's a
Good.
tough thing to do when
All right,
you're talking about...
we'll put our seatbelts on.
Okay, there you go. I feel like, what's his name, Berman from ESPN.
That's right.
Anyway, in 1975, there was a decision called Mount Laurel that formed what we now know as the Affordable Housing Doctrine in New Jersey. And it involved a case of what was called discriminatory zoning, meaning using zoning laws to prevent what the plaintiff groups maintained was using the zoning code to stop affordable housing from being placed into towns. And that was a Supreme Court decision, and what's important about it is the court found as a matter of constitutional law in New Jersey that every town has the obligation to provide for affordable housing. After that decision, about 10 years later, the legislature enacted what's called the Fair Housing Act, and that was the statute that governs how the affordable housing program would be implemented throughout the state of New Jersey. That legislation created an agency, and it was, the acronym for it is COA, the Council of Affordable Housing, and that agency was developed to create regulations to implement the Fair Housing Act. And as a follow-up to that agency, there were a couple rounds of regulations and compliance by the towns, and this is from 1985 all the way up to roughly the year 2000. There was round 1 of the regulations, round 2, and with respect to Berkeley Heights has always complied with round 1, complied with round 2, and as a matter of fact, with respect to the affordable housing units that the township created through rounds 1 and 2, we actually have a surplus going into round 3. After the first 2 rounds of the regulations, COA was then supposed to adopt a third set of regulations to deal with, you guessed it, round 3. And despite roughly 10 years of effort, regulations were proposed. They went through the court system, went up to the Supreme Court. They were rejected and remanded back to the agency to create more regulations or modifications to them. Long and short of it is, March 2015, it went back to the Supreme Court. Court said to COA, where are our regulations? And COA said, we're deadlocked, court. We can't gain consensus on them. And what happened was the court said, instead of following regulations and leaving it to COA, the court took jurisdiction over the whole process. In Union County, there's 21 towns or so, and the Union County Court and the judges assigned to it, there are 2 judges. Those judges said, we're going to pick one town and have a backup town, and that singular town is going to be charged with trying the case on the methodology to determine the number of units that would be applied to each town within the county. What's troubling about that is that particular town would have to fund the entirety of the litigation. So an enormous burden on the town selected, and the other towns would simply have the right to intervene or participate on the side, even though the decisions resulting from that one town's litigation would impact all of the towns within the county. And so that process has ensued over the past few months. Different towns were picked, towns settled, and there's been somewhat of a carousel with new towns stepping up to defend that litigation. Well, on June 2nd, the court said, Berkeley Heights, you're that town. You're now selected to try the case, and Summit has been designated as the backup town. And as part of that ruling on June 2nd, the court said that the trial date is August 2nd, and 2 months to prepare for what is a pretty significant trial. This week, we went back into court. There was a scheduling conference, and the court granted a brief extension until September 6th to try the case. In response to this and throughout this process, we've reached out to our legislators because after all, this was originally a legislative mandate and our legislature is supposed to make the laws. Well, that hasn't happened to date so far. I spoke with Assembly Minority Leader Bramnick, spoke with Legislative Affairs down in Trenton, Senator Sweeney, his office, and basically there's a few bills in committee, but the committee is shut down through the summer, so there's not going to be a legislative solution to this problem in advance of our trial date. Berkeley Heights has complied in the past with our affordable housing obligations. We'll continue to comply in the future. Towards that end, we've reached resolution with a couple of the developers in town. One is 100 Locust. There's going to be a senior or age-restricted development on that site. The former King's property, there's going to be another development there. But basically, to resolve this, we need to reach accord with the plaintiff, which in this instance is Fair Share Housing Center. It's an NGO that's advancing affordable housing rights throughout the state of New Jersey. But the problem we're dealing with is that expert for the plaintiff says, first, that the township would have an 858 unit obligation for affordable units. That would translate to doubling our housing stock in town to roughly 4,000 units, because to construct that number of affordables, you'd need 4,000 overall units to build that number of units. The plaintiff has since dropped its number to 598. In contrast, our expert's around 200. So you can obviously see there's a large gap. We'll continue to negotiate with the plaintiff. We'll continue to comply as we always have. But with this trial date looming, we've got to plan for the worst and hope for the best.
So the NGO is basically another state organization, or no?
They're not a formal state organization. They're just formed. If you look at their website, they're interested in promoting fair housing rights throughout the state. So they're prosecuting, for lack of a better term, the litigation against all the municipalities throughout the state. This isn't unique to Berkeley Heights.
Okay.
Mark, let me ask you, how are they funded? We know how we're funded. We're funded by the people that are sitting here and the other 13,000 or so in this township. How are they funded?
I don't know how they're funded, Mayor, but presumably it's through donation. What's interesting about it also is that also prosecuting a lot of these litigations against the towns are the Builders Association, because obviously they have a significant interest and they would like to see a lot of construction of both market rate units as well as affordable units. And part of what goes on is the developers will say, in order for us to build that number of affordable housing units, we need enormous density because we don't make any money off of the affordable units.
Mark, explain the concept of density.
The way planners and townships look at density is how many units can you fit on an acre of property, let's say. So if you've got single-family residential zones in our town, which we have quite a few of, you'll typically see a third of an acre or half-acre zoning, meaning one single-family home per third of an acre or half of an acre. What you have in the downtown district and in some of these project areas where we've identified for these projects, you're getting densities much higher for apartment uses. For example, could be 20 or 30 units per acre.
Because you're going up as well.
You're going up a little bit.
Right.
It's 2-3 stories, perhaps even higher depending on the location.
So when you say higher, if Berkeley Heights right now we have, was a 2-3 story top maximum right now.
Correct. And we're going to probably stay at that. Now, mind you, the developers certainly, any chance they can get, okay, to impact the town, because ultimately nothing would stop a judge from saying, well, I know that your town has a 3-story
But too bad.
But too bad.
Yeah.
Okay, we don't want to be put in that position, and I don't believe that we are, but there are no assurances at this point in time, and these are the things that we're dealing with.
Any credits from 2 going to spill over to 3? Do you know?
Yeah, I think I said that, but
Will do we know if they're going to give us credit or recognize them, or they're going to say, no, you got to start from scratch?
What's
we don't know.
interesting? What's interesting about this? You don't have those round 3 regulations enacted, so there isn't really a program to follow. The assumption is you're going to follow the same set of regs or something close to it as in rounds 1 and 2, but some of this is breaking new ground.
Got it.
And again, we believe we've always complied, and what we can't stand for or allow to happen is a complete change in character of our town. We will always comply with the New Jersey Constitution, but we don't believe that means, like you were suggesting, perhaps going up 4 stories, 5 stories, have skyscrapers. Yeah. It's not in keeping with our township, and that's why we're aggressively defending this.
But the legislature isn't related to this NGO, which is kind of telling us what to do, so there's apples and oranges going on here.
Right. We don't have legislative activity. Now, I created a summary of where we are.
Okay.
There's
it's convoluted. This is convoluted.
It's very convoluted, but there's a couple of different bills coming from Senator Bateman and Assemblyman Chitterelli, both out of Somerset, where they're looking to add some clarity to the process. There's other companion legislation that deals with some related issues. Greenstein, Bateman, D'Angelo, Benson, all of these are pieces of legislation that, as I said, are in committee, but they haven't gotten out of committee. Yeah. And of course, to be introduced, a lot of these are Republican-sponsored bills, and to get introduced, the Democratic side has to introduce it. But to me, this is a bipartisan issue. Sure. This has got to be dealt with, because this isn't something that should be left to the courts. Yeah. It's legislative action and demands it.
And one of the things, Doc, as I mentioned earlier on, this is bleeding the towns, all these towns, okay? And Senator Sweeney I believe it's next Thursday morning, is being hosted by former Governor DeFrancisco at the Somerset Hills. I know Mr. Fasher and I are going to go down. Nice. And just find out what Senator Sweeney's position, because I know that Senator Sweeney very, very much wants to be the next governor of this state. So let's see what he has to say about why the legislature, whether it be R or D, and I agree with Mark, those that are pushing these bills are Republicans, and they don't control either branch, either the Assembly or the Senate. So getting a bill on the floor is not the easiest thing to do. So that's creating a problem. There was also going years ago, it used to be that a town could pay X amount of dollars, okay? And many towns did. They paid X amount of dollars to the state through the COA, et cetera, and they would go to other towns to build housing, and oftentimes they may go to inner cities and so on and so, assumedly. Yeah. Okay, we're assuming that's what happened. But we were able to buy or otherwise advance monies which would give us credits. That's over.
Okay.
That's no longer, which gives us, again, another issue to have to deal with.
Now, has anybody stepped up as an amicus curiae for us on this? Because I know we were going to step, I think it was Springfield was called ahead of us, if I believe, and we were going to send a note that we support them and we were going to be on their team. Has anybody done that to us? Any of the local towns shown any support for us?
Well, not yet, and that's that part I mentioned, intervention. Yeah. So first of all, a lot of the towns have settled. So they probably don't have an interest in it any longer. There's a few towns that are left similarly situated to us. And again, this is so new, we haven't seen yet whether any of them are going to intervene. But that's not going to save us from not having to prepare the case, because we can't assume, 1, a legislative solution, or 2, that the case is going to settle. We will be prepared. And a lot of these issues are extremely important and haven't yet been decided.
Yeah, it's scary. It's scary. So what's the game moving forward besides that, which is get prepared, cross our T's and dot our I's in terms of what we have done, what we believe is a appropriate assessment of our affordable housing needs here, and have that ready for September? Is that essentially all we can do right now?
No, we're doing a lot of different things. The first is we're continuing to negotiate with those property owners that have expressed interest in developing some properties for housing. So we continue to do that. We continue to wait for a settlement demand from Fair Share Housing. We're waiting for it for a while. Supposedly, one's going to be forthcoming.
Is that good or bad, getting that demand for settlement? Is that
I mean,
good thing or
it's
bad?
always good to
always
continue
good.
the discussions. I don't know whether they're going to come back with anything that's acceptable to us.
Got it.
But why wouldn't we continue to have that dialogue in the hopes of resolving it without spending a lot of money? The other thing we're doing is continuing to prep for the litigation. And just what we did at the inception of this process, which I think is very important and will be helpful for us in the litigation if we have to move forward. So when I mentioned earlier that the plaintiff's experts said that there were 858 units required, now we got a big discount and it's dropped to 598 units. When we saw that and how they developed their number, they had 16 different criteria that they applied to every municipality, including us. But one was looking at the land that the municipality had for development. Well, it appears what they based their estimates on was Google Earth. So when you do Google Earth and you see, hey, look at that Snyder Park, you could jam in a lot of residential units over there, except it's open parkland, green acres, not eligible for development. The other thing a lot of our vacant land has is environmental restrictions, things like wetlands, flood hazard areas, and the like. So what we did is a painstaking effort looking at every open property in town to determine whether or not it was developable. And what we found was that it's not 150 acres, rather it's 4.5 acres that are open.
Wow,
So
big difference.
big
Yeah,
difference.
that's huge.
And you know, when we talked about density, how could you possibly, construct 598 units when you've got 4.5 acres of vacant land?
Nice, good
So-
job. That's a good
Well,
job.
that's
huge.
the frustration, though, Doc. Okay, somebody walks into court with a Google Earth map, okay, and says, "Here's my proof." All right. When we have individuals that have actually done the nitty-gritty down and walked it, I recall when this first came in, up at which is now Nokia, the old Bell Labs. Well, they have areas of gardens, okay, that are gardens. Well, they said, well, here's developable land. Well, it's in the middle of it's a garden inside the middle of AT&T or Bell Labs, okay, and now it's Nokia. But that's the level that we're dealing with, and that's the frustration, because we're sitting here trying to approach this in a reasonable, professional manner, and this is what we're dealing with.
So, Councilman, when do you think we should get the next update? What are you thinking? Daily, I know. But for the citizens, when can they should keep posted?
Well, we report on this every meeting. It seems like the past 2 months, every meeting, there's been a significant change.
Okay.
So I fully anticipate at the next meeting, which I think is June 28th,
right.
we're going to have yet another report on where we are.
So, come to the meetings, attend the meetings, stay abreast of what's happening. We're getting it to you as it comes out, but it'll already be a week late, and that's, in today's day and age, that's old news. Mayor, closing comments for the show?
No, I just want everybody to know that we're working extremely hard on this. We've got some outstanding professionals. We're doing what we think are in the best interest of the people of Berkeley Heights. As I said, Mr. Fasher is our point person. He's very involved in this. He's an attorney by trade. And, we just, all we can do is assure the people that we're working very hard on this.
Enough said. For Mayor Robert Woodruff, Councilman Fasher, thank you again for joining us. I'm Dr. Donald DeFabio, the Mayor's Roundtable, keeping you informed. Have a good night.